But I want to get to this because last week I made a podcast earlier this week rather, I made a podcast talking about Sir Efton Chisum III, the wide receiver out of the University of Eastern Washington. And I think I did a bit of a disservice to Sir Efton Chisum. You know, most people look at his 5'11", 200-pound frame and think, he only ran a 4.7 140-yard dash. Like, this guy shouldn't even be playing in the NFL. And that is concerning, for sure. But someone's straight line speed in track gear, it's not the best measurement for determining a receiver's success in the NFL. Remember Tyquan Thornton? Bill Belichick basically said, we're slow, we need speed. So what did he do? He found the best receiver who ran the best 40-yard dash that year. In fact, I think he had run the best 40-yard dash in history. And they got Tyquan Thornton. So they got speed. But the moment he made any physical contact with the defense or had to stop on a dime and run an out route, it didn't work. It was a massive failure with Thornton. Efton Chisum is basically the exact opposite of that. Chisum was the top-ranked wide receiver in FCS competition this past year. He had 120 catches, 13 and 11 yards, 13 touchdowns. He set the FCS record with 53 consecutive games with a catch, surpassing Cooper Kupp, another Eastern Washington guy. And that's every game he played. Every single game of his career at Eastern Washington, Efton Chisum caught the ball at least once. So, that's pretty nice. He's also, what else do I have here? His 120 catches also broke Cooper Kupp's school record there, and he finished second to Cooper Kupp in receptions and average yards per catch at just over 6.5 yards. This guy basically is very similar to Cooper Kupp. Now, Kupp has a couple inches on him, very similar frame though. Kupp only ran a 4.62 40-yard dash, which is, 9/100ths of a second faster than Efton Chisum, so it's a little bit faster, but that's still well below average for a receiver that size. Slightly shorter arms and smaller hands than Cooper Kupp, but he's actually more athletic in a variety of ways. So his vertical was 3.5 inches higher than Kupp's was when he went to the NFL Combine. His broad jump was 2 inches farther at 9 foot 10 inches. His short shuttle was 2/100ths of a second faster, and his three cone was only 2/100ths of a second slower. He also had two more bench press reps than Kupp did at 225 pounds. He had 16 reps, and Kupp only had 14. So the athleticism is there, even if the speed isn't necessarily there. I guess the question is, how does that translate to the football field? Well, we know his speed tops out, right? He's not going to beat you over the top. By the time he's 20 to 30 yards downfield, the DBs, they're going to be able to catch up to him, no problem. But where he will beat you is with his release, his acceleration, his excellent route running, yards after the catch. This guy is really strong, very elusive, breaks tackles easily for a player of that size, incredible hands. He has some limitations, obviously, with his arm length and his catch radius and just his general size, but if he has the ability to catch it, he will catch it. He's also a very high IQ guy who is gonna follow Vrabel and McDaniel's marching orders and really wants to follow in Cooper Kupp's footsteps. And, we talked about Cooper Kupp many times on this podcast. I really thought Patriots would make a run at him because he wouldn't cost a ton of money. And yeah, he's a little bit banged up at this point and his production's gone down. But I thought Kupp could be a real contributor in New England. This is taking a flyer on a guy who could potentially be a Cooper Kupp type player. And if Jalen Polk, Javon Baker continue to struggle, there's no guarantee those guys make the roster. I think this guy will make the roster because he's going to do whatever the coaches ask of him. And if those guys struggle, I think he will leapfrog them ultimately on the depth chart. Now, I've heard a lot of comparisons that he's a Julian Edelman or Wes Welker type slot receiver, and there definitely is some truth to that. I think he has the release and quickness of Julian Edelman, just not the speed. Edelman's speed, he was like 0.2 of a second faster in his 40-yard dash. But as I said on my last podcast, he's not fast, but he's quick. And he's able to get off the line quickly, put defenders on their toes, really great at those quick slant routes, finding space immediately. You're just not going to line him up on the outside and have him run 40 yards down the field because that's just not the type of receiver that he is. But does have the release and quickness of a player like Julian Edelman. Maybe not quite as good, but he has the capability of being developed into that type of player. But he's probably more of a Wes Welker. You know, Welker ran a 4.65 40-yard dash, which is very close to what Efton Chisum ran. You know, Chisum's a little bit bigger than Welker, but Welker played a lot bigger than his actual size. I think we're going to see a lot. He's kind of a hybrid of the two. And this is the type of player that, you know, Josh McDaniels loves, undrafted guys who high IQ, a little undersized, you know, not the greatest combine scores, but are tough, willing to do whatever you ask of them. Compare that to what Jalen Polk and Javon Baker did last season. I don't know. He might be the better guy when all's said and done. And we know Kayshon Boutte might be on the trade block. Kendrick Bourne, who the hell knows what happens with him. It's a crowded receiving room right now, and it's going to take a lot for Efton Chisum to make that leap. But like I said, if Polk and Baker are a disappointment once again, Vrabel didn't draft those guys. He's not going to hesitate to cut them. I could see them keeping Polk around, throwing him on the practice squad or something if, you know, because he was a second-round pick last year. But I think both of those players are on thin ice at the moment, and that leaves an opening there for Efton Chisum if he wants to get a spot on this roster. And he could also be a practice squad guy, too. You know, undrafted guys tend to not be plucked away by opposing teams. So you could just put him there, and then once injuries happen, he works his way up there. You know, it took Julian Edelman a little while to get into that role that he was in New England. You know, contributed quite a bit on special teams. Wes Welker was there, went down with an injury. Then we saw Edelman out there and said, oh, this guy's very similar to Welker. And within a couple of years, he's the Julian Edelman that might get a red jacket next week, depending on how the fan vote plays out. Efton Chisum could be that guy. You know, he is a special teamer. He could contribute right away on special teams. That was a common theme in this year's draft, particularly in the mid to late rounds and in undrafted free agency. Patriots picked a lot of guys that can contribute on special teams. Efton Chisum can be that guy, and then slowly work his way into the rotation at wide receiver, a la Julian Edelman. Real possibility. I could see it happening, but I don't know. If you watch Efton Chisum, let me know in the comments below. Like, do you think this guy has a ton of potential? I got to be honest, it's really hard watching tape on Efton Chisum, particularly when he's at home, because Eastern Washington University, it looks like they play in the fifth circle of hell. Like, I get the blue turf with Boise State. It's kind of gimmicky, but you can at least still see what's happening on the field. Eastern Washington is just a giant distraction. It makes your eyes bleed. It's not an attractive place to watch a football game. So if you're going to watch Efton Chisum tape, just watch him on the road. Unless, you know, you want to have a view into Satan's soul, which is what the Eastern Washington football field looks to be. But that's it for this episode of PatsCast. If you're watching on YouTube, you like this video, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. A lot of content coming up. You know, we certainly got rookie minicamp, we got minicamp and OTAs and training camp. Not that far away, just around the corner, and of course the NFL schedule release in about a week and a half. We'll be here at PatsCast to cover it. You're not going to want to miss it.